element. We've been talking a lot about boundaries. Here comes up over and over and over again. And I just learned a lot about the metal element, and I wanted to share it with you. This is the metal element from traditional Chinese medicine, and how it can really help us when we are working with boundaries. And what I like about this, similar to the conversation I think we were just having, is that it can be different in different situations, in different relationships, in different life stages, in different parts of your day. And you may call upon like the different aspects of the metal element to support you in your boundaries differently at different times. So I sort of came up with 3 different inspirations from nature that might be helpful to you to sort of visualize what the metal element can do for us. And you may resonate with all of them, with just one of them, with none of them. I invite you to come back and try these practices again at another time and see how they feel for you. But to set it up, the metal element in traditional Chinese medicine is metal is hard and it is strong and stable, but it is a tool. It can be a tool, and it is a tool in transformation. You might think about an axe or a shovel. Those are like mechanical tools. You might also think about the software and hardware, not software, hardware that is in a lot of our technological tools and how they have aspects of metal in them. And so it's about transformation also. So I think sometimes people think about boundaries as like it's a fence or a gate, not a gate, a fence or a wall. But there's time for transformation when it comes to the metal element in traditional Chinese medicine. So it's some people can think of boundaries as negative for that reason, because they see it as something very black and white. It doesn't necessarily need to be that way. So I invite you probably to sit for this practice. You could be standing or laying down, but we'll be using acupressure, mudras, hand postures, and some moving qigong, some simple internal qigong today. So let's first just find a seat or find your feet, depending on how you're situated. Maybe support at your back, maybe not. Just come back to your body from where you might have been. And we're going to start by working with the breath. So let's just take a moment to see what your breath feels like today in this moment, how it's moving through you. Maybe notice where in your body you can sense your breath the most. Breath is obviously well connected to the lungs, and the lungs are the yin organ system and meridians for the metal element. So we'll be working a lot with breath for that reason. And to zhuzh up the breath a little bit and to maybe really hone the focus in, I invite you to just take a peek here and think about this space in your body. It's sort of just down from your shoulders, in from your arm bones. As you palpate in this area here, you might find a little tender spot or a little hurt so good spot. You might call it a trigger point, something in this area. This is the area of lung 1, the first point on the lung meridian. So just remember where that is for you. And then go ahead and cross your arms, and you can bring your thumb to that point, or if it's more comfortable for you to bring your middle finger to that point. Find a way to have each hand contact that point best for you. Yeah, you can maybe hug yourself with your fingers. Go ahead and just take a few moments to explore this, and then allow your elbows to relax down. You can allow your eyes to close again and drop into this place here. Use the amount of pressure that feels right for you here. You may choose to do a little bit of movement, a little bit of circling with those fingertips if that feels good. There's a tendency, especially when your elbows are up, to tighten through this place and to feel tension underneath your fingers here. So really see if you can allow your shoulders to soften down and your elbows to soften down, so that tissue underneath your fingers is soft and yielding to your touch here. So breathe into this place underneath your hands. And we're going to add to this in a moment in a way that works for you. And we're going to incorporate the wrists very much in this practice. There are a lot of points, acupressure points throughout the wrist crease on both hands that are, again, are connected to the metal element. So this is the movement, and then I'll let you drop into your own personal practice. As you're ready, allow your hands to come down and find a strong flexion in your wrists. And then draw your arms back together, back toward each other. I was thinking about shoulder blades coming toward each other. Maybe your gaze lifts up, maybe your arms extend a little bit longer, but keep the flexion in your wrist. And then when you're ready, from the arm bones, start to find an internal rotation. So still a flexion at the wrists where the fingertips come toward each other and you're rounding out, so that eventually you land back with your wrists crossed and your hands at your heart. So we'll go through that movement one more time before we add breath to it. So go ahead and softly allow the arms to come down, find a flexion at the wrists, draw the wrists, the arms away from each other, shoulder blades come toward each other, gaze maybe lifts up to your degree. And then when you're ready, go ahead and rotate internally, the arm bones, internal rotation, fingertips toward each other, round out. Yeah, gaze can come down. And then eventually the hands come back together to rest with the arms relaxed and something contacting that lung one point. So we'll add some breath to this. That's the movement. Now we're going to add breath. As you're ready, on an inhale, arms come down, flexion at the wrist, gaze lifts up. Go to your degree and pause, maybe holding the breath for a moment. And then on an exhale, internally rotate fingertips toward each other, and then arms land back. So I'm going to invite you to continue your pace and your breath so I can talk a little bit here. I mentioned that you're gently tugging at these meridians that run through the wrists, where the metal element is strongest. And the inspiration I get from nature for this movement pattern is one of a clam that opens and closes. So you might think of any sort of sea creature like a mussel or a scallop or something like that, that has the ability to open, decide when it wants to be receptive to water, to food, maybe to locomotion. And then when a predator might come too close or it's a little uncomfortable, it decides when it wants to close off and be with itself. So that's the feeling I get when I move through this. I invite you to explore variations in depth here. You know, just because you open wide, maybe as you're gazing up and in your receptive side of this movement, doesn't mean you have to go to the same degree when you close off. You may enjoy a smaller or shallower depth of movement when it comes to the opposite part of this movement. And same thing with speed. You may choose to do this a little bit faster. You may choose to do this on one breath both times, or you can allow the breath to flow in a way that feels right and comfortable to you in between. Yeah, and you can choose to stay in one half of this movement for several breaths and move a little bit quicker through the other direction. Beautiful. When it feels right for you, allow the arms to soften down and take a moment to just digest the movements that you just did. Maybe think about how this might be helpful, this inspiration might be helpful for you. A place that you might be able to use it in your daily life. The next two practices are practices we'll do with our hands. There's in traditional Chinese medicine, a substance or a quality in your hands called Wei Qi. And it is where the most healing is at the surface of your skin and especially in your hands. So it's lovely. I mentioned the wrists already. It's lovely to do things with your hands when it comes to talking about boundaries, because there's a lot of stuff going on there. Both the support of the healing as well as the element itself. So again, come back to your seat. We're going to do a hand posture. I'm going to lift my hands up so you can see. We start simply by interlacing fingers. So any natural way that you want to interlace your fingers, and I'm going to tip mine to show you. You'll notice that one thumb is sort of surrounded by the thumb and index finger, the opposite hand. It's almost as if you're gripping that thumb. My camera is very washed out, so hopefully you can see that. And so this is basically it. I'll talk a little bit more about what you're doing. We're talking about the tip of the index finger and the tip of the thumb. So when you have this, and that's it, go ahead and rest that in your lap. Allow your shoulders to soften down, your elbows to be relaxed. Again, if you're comfortable closing your eyes, feel free to do that, or maybe cast your gaze down. This is the Venus lock hand posture or mudra. Show it to you on my lap here. And while you're in this shape, you actually are holding on to two critical points. One on the large intestine meridian on top, above the webbing of your thumb, and one on the inner side of your palm a little bit, on the lung meridian. And for some reason, this shape reminded me of the exoskeleton of a beetle. My hands, when I'm in this shape, feel, I don't want to use the word hard, they feel solid. There's something solid in my hands. And it just reminds me of the outer shell of a beetle and how a beetle carries around this exoskeleton as it moves through its day, carrying protection with it all the time. So it almost doesn't need to think about it. It's just part of its being that it has this protective layer. I'll invite you to add a little bit of breath to this, since it's so important that we invite the lungs to be a part of this process. You might be familiar with the 3-part inhale from the breath of joy. That's basically what we're going to do here. So we'll be lifting up this shape, this hand position, 3 times on the inhale. So it looks like this. And then when you're ready on your exhale, let it float down. So it's still the same pattern as breath of joy, if you're familiar with that, but it's a bit softer and maybe a little bit more to tailored to how you're feeling today. So again, 3-part inhale. And then exhale, soften and release down. So if you do this a few times, you may get to the point where your arms are very much over your head and you're taking a little bit of a back bend. If that feels right to you, and then also feel free to pause and retain that breath for as long as you'd like before the arms float back down. And we're stimulating the lung meridian, both with the breath and with the movement of the arms. The lung meridian runs down the arms to the hands. Next time your hands land in your lap, take your time. We'll pause here because I want to give you the opportunity to switch hand positions. So same thing, let's take the hands apart, and now your interlace may be the one you're a little bit unfamiliar with, or maybe it might not be as comfortable or familiar. It's the awkward one. I like to give equal time to both. So again, your thumb and forefinger sort of look like they're surrounding one of the thumbs, and the forefinger's on one acupoint and the thumb is on another, just by virtue of your fingers being clasped. And again, rest that in your lap. Take a moment to see how it feels to do something a little unfamiliar, and be okay with that. Maybe be a little curious about it. Why is it unfamiliar? Think about all the times in your life you've interlaced your hands. No wonder why this feels unfamiliar if you don't normally do it this way. And if that breath pattern was interesting to you and felt good, and if you want to explore it with this interlace, again, 3-part inhale. And then exhale to float down. We'll take a few of these on this side. These practices are a combination of practices I learned from my acupressure teachers, Michael Gach and Malik Cotter. Sort of a mashup of the things that I have learned from them, putting them together in one single practice. Know that when you are taking your daily walk and you're vigorously swinging your arms, sort of in the way that your hands aren't interlaced, but in the way that we're doing with this breath pattern, up and down, that you are doing good work for your metal element, that you're helping to reset and connect with this part of you. Maybe the next time your hands rest in your lap, you can pause here. Tanya, just a reminder that it is 10:30. I've got one more closing practice, but if you need to step out, that is fine. As you're ready, you can release your hands away from each other. And then just a final resting shape for your hands, one you're probably very familiar with. Go ahead and join your thumb and forefinger together, and you can rest those on your lap. You might be familiar with this hand posture as Yana Mudra or Chin Mudra. It's different depending on the position of your palms. But this is the ultimate metal element hand posture. You're joining together the large intestine and lung meridians, the outer and inner parts of you that form a boundary. And I can't help but think of plucking a rose when I think about this hand posture, because your fingers are contacting each other, not strongly, but with just enough pressure here. And if you've ever cut roses from a bush, you know you have to go in carefully, and you have to look for the thorns, maybe look for the flower that you're most interested in. So it's not that you're walking on eggshells when you think about this hand posture and how it shapes your approach to boundaries with another person or your boundaries, but more a sense of care and mindfulness. The way that we maybe choose our words or approach a person from a place of our own compassion, maybe methodically and carefully, so that we're honoring their boundaries as well as honoring ours. You can allow your gaze to soften or your eyes to close all the way that feels right for you here. Thinking about the different ways that we can use this inspiration of the hard shell of the clam. Opens and closes at will, changes depending on the situation. The outer skeleton of a beetle, carried around with it all the time, protecting it from errant dangers that might crop up. And then finally, this gesture of picking a rose, and how, as you approach and work with someone, that you do it with utmost care and respect for them, for both their beauty and maybe their pain or their challenges, just as you would expect them to do the same for you. Know that you can come back to these practices anytime during the day. Boundaries, it's helpful to keep reminding yourself of your edges and how you can dance around them and explore them, as well as other people's too. When it feels right for you, gently release the thumb and forefinger away from each other. Allow the shades of your eyes to rise up in time. And take in the space around you first, maybe by allowing your eyes to travel around the space. And then maybe bringing your whole head into it, your neck. Allow your arms to stretch out again, maybe thinking about pressing away through those wrist creases. One last reminder of the metal element, how it's always there for you for your transformation of your energy. Thank you so much for being here and for exploring with me.